Hey everyone, hope you're well. For those of us who can recall as far back as 1988, you will remember a event known as the Acts of Vengeance, where Loki set about trying to pit various superheroes against supervillains that they had not previously fought. And the idea was that if you mix and match things up, you should get a different outcome. Many heroes fought many different supervillains. In issue 411 of the Mighty Thor, Thor fought the Juggernaut after Loki freed the Juggernaut from his imprisonment in the United Kingdom and transported him, magically of course, to the United States. When Thor found out that the Juggernaut was in his city, wreaking havoc, he went out to investigate and to confront the Juggernaut, and all hell breaks loose thereafter. Now, just a quick thing to point out. Thor was not at his peak during this fight. It's a magnificent fight, one of my favorite issues of the Mighty Thor. I really, really remember this issue with fondness, and I reread this many, many times. But during this time, Thor was going through a bit of he was going through bouts of weakness that would suddenly hit him for no reason. We didn't know by this stage what the problem was, but there was a problem. So it's peak Juggernaut fighting a slightly weakened Thor. That should give you an idea as to what we're kind of expecting here, and it also explains how the fight in this issue turns out. It is a fight between in two issues, 411 and 412, but in 411 at the very end we're introduced to the New Warriors, and in 412 the battle is between Juggernaut, Thor, and New Warriors, because in 411 it doesn't go so well in Thor's favor. This is drawn by Ron Frenz and written by Tom DeFalco. A great issue, and let's get into it. So the Juggernaut is walking around causing wanton, although I might add sometimes unintentional destruction, because let's face facts, he's the Juggernaut. Every time he walks on the pavement, it cracks. If he sits on a chair, it'll break. If he tries to enter a building, he'll smash through it. In a way, I kind of feel sorry for him. It's not his fault, but in this instance, he is on the lookout for a fight. So when Thor confronts him and says, "Listen, stop your destruction, mate. It's not very nice," Juggernaut, in a very irreverent manner, very rude in fact, just swats him out of the way as if he's nothing, with a backhand. Now Thor, of course, recovers from the blow, and objects are thrown. By objects, I mean vehicles, large vehicles, small vehicles, and this this carries on for a bit. And one of the great things about this comic is the cinematic quality of the panels. This is something that I think you could imagine. Oh, I see. I remember seeing something similar in Superman 2, when Superman was fighting General Zod and his cronies in Metropolis, and things were being thrown about. Large buses were being thrown about. People were being thrown into billboards. It's got that kind of quality to it, and I say that in the best way possible, because I love that film. I love that movie. That movie is fantastic. The action scenes for that time were brilliant, and equally, the action scenes drawn here by Ron Frenz are they're so immersive. It's like you're almost there. Brilliant, brilliant panels. The other thing that really impressed me about this issue is the sheer ferocity with which these two characters go about pummeling each other. Well, I say both characters. It's mostly the Juggernaut who's doing the majority of the pummeling here, because, as I mentioned, Thor's weakened state doesn't allow him to really cut loose as he wants to. But the picking up of train carriages and smashing it into Thor, and then Thor, even though he's weakened, relatively unfazed, punches back and sends the Juggernaut flying. I mean, we're talking about two powerhouse figures here, and perfectly drawn out in these panels, showing exactly what each one is capable of. It's magnificent. One of the most striking scenes in this issue is when Thor, in a fit of anger and perhaps a slight hint of desperation, frustration, whatever, hurls his hammer Mjolnir at Juggernaut, thinking that it's going to have some sort of direct major effect. But the Juggernaut has a force field which basically negates the effect of Mjolnir coming towards him. And then as the hammer is returning back to Thor, he grabs onto the hammer and basically hitches a ride back in order to attack Thor. Now, I think this was a first. I have not seen this particular action where the hammer has been used to transport an opponent back to Thor before in the comics. And if so, then basically this is history that's taken place, where his own weapon has been used against him in such a well overt manner. Um, so that was really interesting to see. Like I say, I hadn't seen this before, and this took me by surprise. I can only, of course, imagine that if Thor was a real character, what a massive surprise that would have been for him also. So very creative writing, very creatively put on paper, and very creative illustrations. The effects of this action by Juggernaut are devastating for Thor. The momentum of the hammer, coupled with the Juggernaut's sheer mass, I suppose, sends both characters reeling and flying off into the distance, going and crashing through various train carriages until they finally smash into a building. With, of course, Thor taking the bulk of the attack and the impact, and this basically puts him more or less out for the count. Um, this again, I mentioned cinematic quality. This panel, which shows them going through all those carriages, it's very reminiscent of the first Superman. Well, not the first Superman, but the first Henry Cavill Superman, where there's a fight that takes place in the train dockyards, and there's explosions and various things that blow up. It just takes me back. I know it's not the same thing, but again, I mentioned the cinematic quality, and I still stand by that. This is a very cinematic piece of work, and like I say, I went back to it over and over. Beautiful panels, really well done. This relentless, ferocious attack by the Juggernaut eventually leads to the defeat of Thor. But this defeat must be taken with the caveat that Thor was weakened considerably due to this, unresolved, unknown malady that he was suffering from at the time. And so he was not at his peak, which actually it speaks volumes about the real power of Thor, that despite his weakness at the time, he still managed to hold out as long as he did against a Juggernaut who was in his prime. This issue is also of, as far as I'm concerned, historical significance, because not only does it show the novel way in which Thor's hammer was used against him, but this issue also introduces the new warriors to the world. When the Juggernaut is about to deliver the death blow to Thor, the new warriors intercept the Juggernaut and basically stop Thor from being killed. Now, that is a fantastic introduction, and what better than the pages of Thor to introduce such an amazing team? The New Warriors, as far as I'm concerned, were actually a pretty cool team. I think they may still be around in one way, shape, or form, perhaps, but I haven't heard about them in the past decade or so very much at all. I think their heyday was very much in the late 80s and the early to mid 90s, and it kind of petered out after that. But yes, a very historical issue where these fantastic new heroes are introduced, and I think these were heroes of some worth. They had some pretty good characters. Um, so yeah, there you have it. This is my rambling summary of Thor issue 411, a fight, a battle of epic proportions, and which continues in issue 412. But that issue is, of course, the team up between Thor and the New Warriors against the Juggernaut. And I think that this issue had a bit more of an impact just due to the fact that the cover is fantastic. The concept of the fight between Juggernaut and Thor initially brilliant, and the sheer beating that Thor took but still held on truly shows the heroic valor that is representative of a character like Thor. Even though he's going down fighting the good fight, and that's basically why you love Thor so much. So Yeah, an issue that does not disappoint. If you haven't read this, guys, look, my summary only is somewhat of an idea of what the comic's about. I would highly recommend that you try and get it and read it. It is a fantastic read, and I guarantee that you will go back to it over and over, much like I did. So yeah, that concludes my rambling summary. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of discovery of issue 411. And like and subscribe if you will. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you again in the next one.